Christians could never even come close to doing that if we were, we'd be like the God of, I don't know, I don't care, and I'd never met him.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Right? Now, of course, that's really difficult in the Western world where we don't have that memory, don't have that record keeping, we don't think like that. But I think it should inspire us to just think in a long way, and it should take the pressure off. Here's what I mean by this. If you think that you have to do everything right and just nail it as a parent and just crush life right until you send your kids off at 18, that's a lot of pressure. Right? But if you actually believe that just like this missional, generational thing, even though it's going to change in stages as they become literal adults, goes till for like 100 years, goes for 150 years. And it's more like you taking a football and carrying it down the field and then passing it one generation. The Rockefellers would be a really good example of this.
Oh, you always pull from
I love them.
elite family.
Because
and I love it.
They're all
so interesting.
They're perfect metaphors for the spiritual nature of what I'm saying. Because of course their versions of all this, what I'm about to say is wealth and money and oil, but it's metaphor for like spiritual legacy. So everything I'm about to say, take it as a spiritual legacy thing. But the Rockefellers are a great example. And John Rockefeller was actually a really good dad. He only had one son, and certainly back then that was kind of your line gets passed through the son. He obviously was the richest person in the world thanks to oil at that time. He was the Elon Musk of the day. And so he has all this wealth. And because when people hear me say what I just said, they go, oh, like it's all these clones of just like the next generation doing the exact same thing and the exact same thing. And there's no freedom of individualism. That's always what people are thinking. But it's like, he was a really good example of, no, it's about paying attention to your kids and just passing the resources, the legacy and the teaching so that they can do their mission and extend the family mission and grow it. So his thing was oil, and when he was dying, I mean, think about the pressure, by the way, like he easily could have felt a lot of pressure to like pass the business. Yeah. Like, man, this thing's worth billions of dollars and it's going to sink if no one else takes it. And I only have one son. And if he doesn't take Standard Oil, that's what it was called, then like it goes bankrupt. I don't know, right? Just goes into the crapper, just goes into the trash. And so like he had to feel that pressure, but he was sensitive enough to his son. His son was a huge, generous person and really cared from like a philanthropic standpoint. And so his son only cared about basically like blessing people and wanting to like build libraries, build hospitals, build schools and all these things, which is not what oil does, right? And so he just paid attention enough to his son that he basically gave the son the money and that blessing of like, hey, your mission is clearly you want to build hospitals, build schools, build libraries. So take the resources that I've built. I've used my whole life as taking the football down the field, give it to you. Now in your own way, you've discovered your own calling, and I want you to utilize that for the next generation. And if you know the Rockefellers today, they're still a healthy family. They still meet, have crazy family meetings that are fun to research. They document online how they do their family meetings. It's crazy. And who can vote and who's worth what votes, and it's wild.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's just like it's really hard. Meaning like you're in the family, but you don't get a seat at the table for voting on certain things until you've proved it. Like with your integrity, your character, and like a couple different like benchmarks you have to show. But now they're 100% philanthropic. Like they since this is like 1800s, since the 1800s, they've been the most philanthropic family that's ever lived. So it's like because the senior had enough wisdom to like open up the box and just say, I trust the next generation's calling, but I'm going to pass down what I have. They are now who they are most famously. Like they're not known for oil. They're known for philanthropy. And so I just think that's a really good example spiritually of like generationally God gives visions and missions that are way longer than your life for a city, for Dallas, for Hawaii, for Franklin, that he wants these places to look a certain way. He wants them to be discipled a certain way. He wants the church to be built up in a certain way. And like that doesn't happen in 5 minutes. So like we actually need the generations for that to be true.
So what about families out there who are listening to this and saying, oh man, I already moved 5 states away from my upstream, the grandparents of my children. Or maybe I don't have, my parents passed away. What do you say to, you're such a proponent of multi-generational living and your parents being involved, but what if you don't?
Great question. So here's the fun part that I haven't gotten to. The New Testament makes a pretty significant leap from everything I've just said. It's absolutely true, everything I've said, but it adds another layer of spiritual family. So it's very clear in Acts that like Jesus came to make a new family, like a new family. Now, again, we can read that in the West and see it so strongly as like, oh, throw away old family. I think it's more of just like adding another layer to what's true. And so I know plenty of people where, man, their parents are toxic, their parents are unhealthy, or there's certain things that are not strong, or they're moved away, or they passed away. And they're living so amazingly generationally with mission and blessing and goodness with like spiritual parents, right? like people that are discipling them and people that they're learning under and people that they're mentored by, and then they're passing that down. Like there's definitely a Paul and Timothy relationship, not just between men that we see in the New Testament, like Paul and Timothy, but family-wise. Like families are meant to embed, to kind of mesh together in a city. And I think spiritually that is 100% true, that God's coming to make a new family. And if you love Jesus, you're in the new family. And everything I just said is true spiritually. You know what I mean? The generational stuff and building a church and being part of a community and stuff like that.
Man, so cool.
You guys are, this is the best interview ever, by the way.
I think one more question on this topic.
I'm being quiet because I'm so excited about the new book.
Trust me.
I'm trying to get him to segue there.
We're getting there.
I'm giving all the value that is needed. This is my test run.
I know. I'm sorry. See, I need to take a seat back.
Okay.
It's hard. You guys,
one of the most impressive things that you've taught me about outside of Western culture families is rhythms in the home.
Totally.
A lot of people, when I first started reading your book and hearing from you and Jeremy, I was like, rhythms, what does that mean? And I would like for you to kind of unpack the importance of rhythms, what you see rhythms meaning and looking like in a family, and maybe some practical tips on establishing rhythms.
Great question. Where would I start with this?
Yeah, maybe there are unique things that your family does that no one else.
And
there should be both. Unique ones.
Defining rhythms in the context of family, because I think we all know what the word rhythm means, but what does that mean to you?
Well, the technical definition is like music. It's a cadence that something operates in a very particular way. It's clear that, again, from the scriptures, the ancient, and even people in the ancient world outside of the scriptures would have thought this, that there's rhythm to like every part of how we see calendar. The day, right? Sun up, sundown, right? The week, the month, the year, like you can go on and on. There's clearly rhythm. And again, everyone else pre-modern society, pre-electricity, like submitted to these things as actually like they're different, right? Like, do you know you're not supposed to be able to buy a tomato in January and in June? They grow certain times of the year, but we live in this place called America. They can just grow them in a lab and so we can eat them. We're so anti-rhythmic because we are so addicted to controlling our environment and making what we want to be true at any moment in time that we don't like rhythms because they're limiting but really beneficial. Just like music, right? Like when you're dancing at a wedding, rhythm will force you have to dance in beat, right? Hopefully, unless you're a white guy that can't do it or something like that. Exactly.
I'm trying to figure this rhythm thing out.
Like you're not dancing well if you're not dancing in rhythm. That's like an objective fact. Yeah. But once you're dancing in the rhythm, you can pick 100 different dance moves. Do you see like the freedom, but the submission? So one interesting thing too, by the way, is the week is the superpower rhythm, 100%. The week is a powerful tool that we don't realize is a powerful tool. And think about this too. Why do we even honor a week? Like it's really weird that we honor 7 days. Why do we honor a day? There's a very clear external reality. Can you guys guess? Why do we
light and dark?
Exactly. Yeah. Sun up, sundown. Nailed it. Okay, month. What's a month measured by?
Days.
That one's tougher.
Seasons.
Oh. The moon.
Oh, okay.
So the lunar cycle is what sets a month. Okay, and then you guys will get this one, hopefully.
Oh gosh.
How do we measure a year? Why do we know it's a year?
Oh gosh.
One trip around the
moon.
Sun. Claire, she got it. She got it.
I'd like to thank my fifth grade teacher.
Yes. This come from the 1.8 GPA, baby. Okay. Now, hardest question. How do we measure a week?
In the Bible?
Yeah.
I mean, nailed it, actually. There's no external reality, which is really interesting. There's no scientific external reality why we honor a week. That's kind of wild. But yet, we've proven, like French Revolution tried to do a 10-day week, just failed miserably. Communist Russia tried to do a 5-day week, which you think would be better because it's shorter, failed miserably. So it's like we're created for this 6 and 1, this work and rest rhythm, right? And if you don't submit to it, it's to your detriment. Now, I think it's a superpower for a family. There's other rhythms, whether it can be personally, spiritual formation, prayer, etc. It can be fun pizza night. But here's the quickest thing I would say to kind of answer your question after explaining all that. Rhythms like are identity shaping moments and days and like things in your week. So think about that. They're identity shaping things. Like they're not routine. They're not, I tie my shoe. That's not a rhythm. A rhythm is like an identity shaping behavior.
Like Shabbat dinner.
Exactly. Sabbath would be a perfect example for us. Like we built up to it, but it's a huge 24-hour thing in our household we've been doing for a decade. The in-laws come over, we ask them stories, we sing a song, we light a candle, we show pictures. I turn off my phone the next day, we don't work, we swim, we play, and all of a sudden we leave that one day and we're like, we are so full right now of like goodness and life and just like family love, right? So it like has shaped our identity. And you can do that in small ways too in the week and whatever it is.
Like traditions that you
Yes,
build
exactly. Traditions is a really good replacement for like rhythms.
Okay.
I think they can just even be smaller, like, you know, like little tiny things you do in the morning. Or so another one is every single morning, me and the kids do this little prayer. We've been doing it for 5 years. Can I say it real quick?
Yeah.
So I tell the kids to put their hands out in front of them, and I say, receive after me. And then the prayer is, I'm not what I do. And they say it. I'm not what I have. I'm not what other people say about me. I'm the beloved of God. It's who I am. No one can take it from me. I don't have to worry. I don't have to hurry. I can trust my friend Jesus and share his love with the world. And it's a repeat after me. So I say it, they say it, I say it, they say it, I say it. If you do that every single day, I mean, that's 30 seconds.
Yep. Yeah.
But if that's going to be 20 years in their body, and I do this fun thing where I give them like an M&M at the end, because I read the Psalm where it's like the law of the Lord is like honey on my lips, and honey was just like way messy.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's just do the American version of that. So I just toss an M&M in their mouth. But think about this though. So again, the Jewish people are so tactile with their rhythms, and that matters. The West is so about the intellect. We just think if we think the right thing, it's going to form us. Thinking the right thing doesn't form you. Like letting real things enter into your five senses forms you, right? Yeah. To the point of even like, you know, let's say my kids are maybe in a really wayward, bad season in their 20s. They're not making really healthy decisions, and they're on road trip with friends, and maybe they're partying, maybe they got drunk. I don't know, all these bad decisions that can happen. And all of a sudden they're on a road trip, and they stop at a gas station, and they go to get snacks, and they see Peach O-Rings, which are my favorite, and then next to it they see M&Ms. If they see M&Ms, what do you think they're gonna think? Like, it'll be so visceral in their body because they've done this prayer for 20 years. Yeah. They'll just start saying it in the middle of 7-Eleven. Yeah. I'm like, that's the power of like little rituals and rhythms, small or large. And it's really, really important because that's the glue of a family.
I love that.
It's so funny. It's, you know, Jewish culture. Dani grew up around like a lot of Jewish families.
Oh yeah,
she speaks about this a lot. There's like every Friday.
I thought he was about to say you speak Yiddish or something. I was like, that's amazing. Let's go. That's impressive. That's impressive.
I mean, all my friends are Jewish.
I know you speak Spanish too.
Yeah, trilingual. You know, no, that's literally all I can say.
Okay.
I have been to 18 bar mitzvahs.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's legit.
Yeah.
And so it's cool. Like she's talked a lot about the rhythms that her friends experience. Like they would go home on Fridays for Shabbat dinner, and it was like such a important piece of like the family culture.
Did you go to Israel and Friday night? It's really weird. A country shuts down.
Yeah.
Wow.
Friday night to Saturday, it's just like nothing is open.
Yeah.
There's no cars on the road.
There's only one group in the West that I give credit. I tell you this all the time.
Okay.
The Mormons.
The Mormons.
Oh, strong. Dude. Strong. They have strong formation, 100%.
Theologically, we have some disagreements on the family. No, but here's the thing. In this mastermind I planned, I had Stephen Houghton, who's Mormon, come, and I said, hey, listen, I don't want to get into
He's coming tomorrow?
Yeah, he's coming tomorrow.
Shout out to Stephen. I'll see you there, bro.
He's, I was like, listen, I went up to him and I was like, listen, I mean this
He's actually going to love my talk.
Very sincerely. I was like, I do not want to talk theology with you, but I want you to come and I want you to teach us everything that you know about like Mormon culture and what you guys do in terms of traditions.
Totally.
Because they've mastered the family.
100%.
They really have. And he was telling me that like even his dad would have a theme song for the family.
Yes.
And if you meet this family, the Houghtons, they're the most positive people.
Yes.
You can't make them sad.
Yes.
And I asked him one
time. The Mormon superpower.
I was like, why is this? And he was like, well, you know, we always had like a pump up song every morning before we went to school. And we had this, I forgot his chant.
But it's like a little prayer, a thing.
Yeah, a little prayer, a little saying.
And it just embeds in your soul.
Yeah. And so it's like, I'm so excited for him to share things. But
I love that.
They dominate too. I just want to give them credit. Yes. They dominate.
Well, they do. And the Mormons have such an amazing vision of like discipleship and formation. Yeah. And then when you're 18 and a 16-year-old boy, it's mandatory that they basically go to like a Mormon level seminary before high school. Wow. And I remember I weighed a lot of Mormons in my high school, and they would always have to go to the Mormon school across the street from the school at like 6 to 7 a.m. and then come to school. And it's like, and then obviously they have to do the mission. That's just mandatory.
Wow.
And it's like when you hold people to a really high caliber, it's crazy how deeply formative it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been talking about family quite a bit.
Let's talk about some men.
Yeah, I want to transition to your
perfect.
Your next book.
Yes. Dani can ask all the questions about men.
Perfect.
Dani's got some questions, so you go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, okay, first of all, you guys just talk about your new book.
Yeah. Oh, okay, done.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Fighting Shadows.
And how you got to this topic.
Yeah, so Fighting Shadows. I really do like the title. It's a central metaphor we use throughout the whole book, that there's 7 dominant shadows that are kind of like lurking on a man's heart. We got it from the story in the Gospels where Jesus is talking to Peter, who Catholics believe is the first pope, who I just believe is an amazing disciple. And he's talking to Peter.
Let's get into that.
I know, right? Is Peter the first pope? 1 billion people are going to disagree. Literally, that's the number of Catholics on earth, so that many people are going to disagree with me. Shout out to Martin Luther. But anyways, okay. That was a Protestant Reformation joke. Anyone? Okay. No, that bombed in the room.
So here's trying to keep the Mormons.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. So it comes from the story where Jesus says to Peter, this is kind of a wild conversation. He looks at Peter and he says, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. Like it's basically like Jesus and Satan have had a private conversation and Jesus lets Peter know about it. And he goes, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, which basically just means like destroy you, rip you apart at every fabric of your being. That's insane, by the way. I never want that to be said about me.
Yeah, me either.
But he said that about Peter. And then Jesus says, but I have prayed that your faith will not fail. And that word fail in the Greek is the word eklepos, which is literally the same Greek word for eclipse. It's where we get the word eclipse. And it's funny, we wrote this book before the famous eclipse. We wrote this book like 2 years ago. And then last month we had the famous eclipse. But what's an eclipse, right? It's where something that is technically smaller than the light, like it's not as big and it's not as powerful. It's just closer to your face that it blocks out all of the light. It kind of comes in front of you and you no longer see the light. And think about this, by the way, in ancient civilization, when they saw an eclipse, they probably would have thought like apocalypse. It only lasts 5 minutes. But then they're like, is our world ending? It's dark at lunch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, that is kind of like the spirit and the feel of what we're talking about with this book. If there's 7 dominant lies, I don't have it memorized yet, but it's like lust, ambition, futility, apathy, and a few more. And I think those are the things that are coming between men of like not only seeing Jesus, but seeing their full self, like seeing who they're meant to be, who they're created to be, and it's too close to their eyes. And so the book is basically trying to like address those and then try to show them how to get those out of the way so they can see who they're truly created to be.
And to make this like more relatable to like our predominantly female audience, like, you know,
you got brothers, you got husbands, you got fathers.
Well, Jess came onto the podcast and Brittany as well. They were both on Love is Blind. And both of them, we talked
I've heard that's a banger show, by the way. Is it good?
It's
I've never
so
seen it.
good. It's amazing.
Netflix, Prime, where are we watching
in
it?
the last episode, you have to watch it. Netflix, right?
Done.
Yeah, it's Netflix.
Done.
So
I just start seeing it pop up. I'm like, I need to, okay.
Yeah, it's
But
so
they
good.
came onto the podcast and they were talking about the dating scene in Charlotte where they lived before that. And this is kind of a reoccurring theme. We have a lot of females that work at Divvy, and it's like, when they talk about dating men,
dude, guys just suck today.
They suck. I mean, and it's so fascinating because it seems like it was like, okay, and then it just plummeted, right? And now there's a huge consumer culture when it comes to dating apps. Like, it's really they're not really strong in their values. There's a lot of apathy. They game all day. These are the types of things that you are trying to address
100%.
and attack in the book, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think you alluded to the perfect point. It's like, even if you're a 99% females listening, we are in an interweb of human relationships, and half of this world is men. And there had to be one man and a woman to make you. So you're here because of a man. You might have brothers. You certainly have coworkers. Like, women need to be thinking about men, their psychology, their lies, their idols, and vice versa. We need to be thinking about how to serve women, how to think about them. What are their problems? What are the pressures they're under? How can we make sure that they don't feel like that? And so, yeah, it's absolutely that and deeply important.
So what happened? What happened to men?
Good question.
Give us the history of the family. What happened to men?
Yeah, I think a lot of things have happened to men.
Fortnite.
Yes, I love Fortnite, but I'm also a controlled, disciplined man at 34. And if you're wasting your life at 27, get off right now. I would say, oh man, that one's hard to answer because there's so many reasons. Certainly, I would say the book if you want the deep reasons. I would say there's a couple different things. Let's actually jump even back to your conversation. We maybe go to this question next of kind of the roles and some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things that's gotten really difficult, and why I actually feel for a lot of men is because they feel like they've been usurped, and not in the sense of like that women are taking their jobs, not at all. I just mean like you said a good thing. You were like, they feel like their job is to be a provider. We've been told that for a long time.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it's like, well, everyone can provide. Anyone can provide, right? It's just own a business, run a business, do a thing, have a job.
So what's your value now?
Exactly. And so that is a really big one. That's not the only one, but that's a very large one and that's what we talk about in the apathy chapter, is that when men feel like they're not needed, which certainly non-Christian secular culture is pushing that, and certainly is even saying you guys, men are evil, men are the ill, like men are like the problem with everything can be blamed on men, certainly if they're white, and you're right, you know what I mean? And it's like that's kind of the scapegoat to everything right now. And then just the fact that men don't understand like oh, of course, in 1800, we were the only one that could swing a hammer to build that road. Like, you know what I mean? But now it's like, it's software-based work and computers. Yeah. So there's many reasons, but that is a real one, that like men's identity around work has gotten deeply reshuffled. And I don't think that's for the wrong. It's just like, they need to understand what has happened, if that makes sense.
Is that worldwide because of AI and software? Is that just...
I would say a little bit, but I would say more of a Western problem. Australia, UK, kind of first world developed countries are the ones that no longer are like super based in manual labor, even though, by the way, there's millions and millions of blue collar men in America that like undergird this whole country. Yep. That like undergird everything. You know what I mean? The roads, the tunnels, the water, everything. So yeah.
Do you think a lot of them are not doing certain jobs at home because there's also like a stigma to them, like maybe taking care of the kids, or is it more about their ego?
So let's talk about the roles thing for an interesting. This is an interesting conversation that I'm starting to even think about more, even since I've finalized the book, even though we talk about it in there. Historically, most cultures have defined men and women, like what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Not with roles, but with virtues, which is really interesting, right? So like, and again, and we can talk about why this got interesting, but whether that's, courage would have tended to be historically a predominantly male virtue, even though of course females can be courageous. Nurturing would have tended to be a very dominant female virtue, even though of course a male can be nurturing. But we flipped it to roles, being a man as the worker, being a woman as the stay-at-home person. And I think that's not right. I think that's to the detriment of actually our society, because what happens is those are way more insecure. Like, okay, well, like what happens when the woman's providing and you're not? You can still be courageous. You can still be loving and kind and have virtue. But like when we define men and women based on their roles, even though the Bible has a lot to say about that, but I don't think it's the dominant definition. It really messes with people because roles are actually really fragile. Yeah. So one of the dominant roles is to be a woman is you need to be a mom. Well, what if you're single? What if you can't have children? What if it's like 10 years of suffering? And you know what I mean? Like, are you just not a woman? That's of course ridiculous. Of course you're a woman. Right. And so it's like, I think one of my arguments is rebasing being a male and being a female in the virtues is a really interesting conversation. I have more thoughts on that, but do you guys have any thoughts to that or anything you want to respond to that?
I would say,
because I'm going to keep going.
What do you mean virtues?
So like virtues would be like, there's a couple different ways to define it. Aristotle, I believe, had the 4 cardinals virtues, which would be prudence, love. I'm blanking on the other 2. But there's also like a lot of things. It's basically descriptors of like, courageous, loving, kind, nurturing, strong, like these like prudent based virtues, descriptors that are good for society to have.
Like so why you do what you do, essentially.
Yeah. Like,
and then, but like, it's not your role. It's not what you're doing, but your virtues are like what you stand for. Like
so here's a better way to put it. They're not you personally. Virtues are external realities. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So like courage is an external reality that that is a virtue that we should all aspire to. Right. Love is a virtue that we should all aspire to. Now what's interesting is I absolutely believe this anthropologically, that like men and women, male and female's virtues overlap. So it's not like here's male ones, here's female ones, they never touch. Like I said, a female can be courageous, male can be nurturing. Here's an interesting conversation too. I just read this. I wish I would have put this in the book. There was a really interesting, because here's what happened. The reason we changed from defining men and women from a virtue-based definition to a role-based definition is because as kind of the intellect and some of the modern societies started thinking in a particular way, one of the biggest things people would say is, if I say being a man is courageous, what's your natural kind of like rebuttal to that? I mean, being a man is to be courageous. I've kind of already alluded to what the rebuttal is, but it's like, well, a woman can be too.
Yeah.
Right? That's like the natural rebuttal. Right. And so then what most people have said is like, oh, they're right. I guess that is not what it means to be a man. Let's throw it off and let's base it in the roles. Okay. But here's what's interesting. I think it was a Catholic theologian I was reading. He had a really good point. He's like, of course, and I'm blanking on all of them. He has a list of like 10 male virtues, 10 female virtues. But he says, of course, a female can be courageous. But here's what's interesting. Only a man will be judged on if he's not. That's what shows it to be a male virtue. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's very fascinating. And you could take the reverse with nurturing, right? Like a man absolutely can and should be nurturing, but only a female will be judged if she's not.
Right. That's so true.
Isn't that wild to think about? I'm like pissed I didn't read that till after the book.
That is so true.
But it's real. And so that's a really good way to define it, of like, there is real male and female virtues. They overlap. They can be true of both, but we have to ask almost in a simple way, which ones are suggested and which ones are mandatory for that particular sex.
Okay. And how does that play into the crisis of what
everything
they're going through in American?
Well, I think it's what I alluded to earlier of just like, that's just where we're at sociologically. So then we've made a big shift to defining it in roles. And I just think that's a really insecure thing. Because like I said, you're like, oh, you're not the provider anymore. Well, I guess you're not a good man. Or you can't have kids. You're not a good woman. Or whatever these things, these lies that we throw at men and women.
So what would you say to the men maybe that you're going to meet tomorrow that don't feel valued or they don't feel important anymore because their wives are the breadwinners?
And they are having to step up as more nurturing with their kids. They're having to, play some of the quote unquote roles. Of the household that the female is, or what we were raised to believe is what the female plays.
And to be totally honest, and I'm not just talking about the men tomorrow, but I know a lot of the mommy bloggers in the space, and I know a lot of the husbands are basically like what you would call a stay-at-home dad these days. And they will not publish that. In fact, sometimes they maybe used to be police officers or firefighters or whatever it is and they will hide the fact that they still are saying that they're in that profession, but they're so scared to announce that they don't work anymore. Because what they're doing at home obviously is so much work. It is the hardest work.
I know the moms are like, it's a lot harder than you thought it was.
No, exactly. So what would you say to them?
I think I would go back to what we talked about a little bit ago with the team stuff. That's where the team dynamic is really helpful. Because if you're basing it in individual callings, even though we all have individual callings, but if you're ultimately basing it in individual callings, then it gets really fragile. But if you realize, okay, just like a sports team, just like a business team, we're going to have this team that's going to be malleable over the years, right? The CEO is going to swap out in 5 years and maybe the COO is going to take over. And maybe this employee is going to be promoted and maybe this person is going to move to this division. And it's like most people, because they have, and in those places, it maybe could still sometimes be hard to do those job transitions. It's not nearly as hard in an identity way as the family one we're talking about, like when men have to go stay at home, et cetera. And I think it's because they have missional agreement. When you have missional agreement, you're down for whatever. Does that make sense? It's like me and you, plus the kids are doing this thing. And we're meant to do it. We're wired to do it. We're called to do it. So I will do this as my role.
I mean, if I can just harp on Jordan, he does that so well. I think at first, whenever you started working with me,
you're bragging on me. I was about to brag on you.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my God.
You guys. I'll just be quick. Let you guys go real quick. Back and forth. Do it.
But he does it so well. And I know at first, whenever we started working together, it was really scary. But from a woman's perspective, when a man does step up and he's been malleable. The times whenever I have to go off, I have to do an interview, I have to go to LA, whatever, and he's staying home with the kids, helping Stella bake cookies, whatever it is. From a woman's perspective, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so hot. The fact that he doesn't care and he doesn't put these roles.
He's not insecure about it.
It's not insecure. He just owns it. And I feel like most wives are probably love that.
It's so crazy because all the kind of mindsets that you've shaped into me has even helped me decide what roles I need to take professionally, knowing that my number one role is as
a father and a team,
a father, a nurturer, and I don't see it as stay-at-home dad. I'm no, this is our team.
You're
this
leading.
Is the most important team. That's where I'm at. And I would say the one thing I was going to brag on, you and us on for is I think that we have always said we. And I don't think it's something we talked about. It just happened. It's always been if Dani's in an interview with Ulta or getting interviewed by Vogue or something, she is always saying we, whether we is referring to Divvy and her team or Dani and I in our marriage. And I think that just that team mentality that we have always had has been a huge
I might be the only one in the reel, but I'm we made that. We did it,
where'd you guys get that from? How you guys like that? Was it like that when you guys started dating? Was it conversations? Was it you feel like it was from both your guys' families growing up? That's just really interesting because I've
always valued collaboration. I think I just know for a fact that other people are better at what I'm bad at.
We all have gaps.
I feel like I need them. I honestly, even with this podcast, I'm it's a we effort. And so,
I think for me, it was dying to the ego. The first year we worked together, and I tell the story all the time, I'll just skip over it, but it's the first year that we worked together, I went from holding this title, this role, as I'm the chief marketing officer of this tech company,
to just doing what needs to be done.
To our parents being okay, so my daughter's gonna be providing, and it was just a weird thing, and so it was completely ego crushing.
And you're I got a sugar mama, baby.
Let's go. No, that's not how I adopted it. I would avoid social situations and parties because I wanted to avoid that question. Of what do you do?
He was so scared.
I was so insecure about it. And I was early 20s. That's when it's really important to your identity as well. But going through that ego destruction process just helped me understand, okay, I don't have to worry. I almost adopted an Enneagram 8 where I was like, I don't give an F what people think.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this is the most important thing that I'm doing for my wife. And,
and you see it bearing fruit. And I do want to just honor you guys. I've seen, obviously we've hung out, we're friends for a bit, but mostly seen you from afar. Like, you guys have done such a good job with your marriage, with how you guys lead, with how you guys own the businesses. You're doing exactly what you're saying. I think it's very apparent online that you guys do it very well, and I think it's a huge inspiration.
Thank you.
So well done.
We will receive that.
Yeah, well done.
Yes.
I see what you did there.
Okay, let's wrap up. Your new book.
Final thought, 30 seconds.
Wait, can we ask you controversial questions really fast?
I'm down. How, like a funny controversial? Like what kind of chapstick do I use or something?
I want to make sure that your new book is highlighted, and then we're going to ask you.
Done. Fighting Shadows. You can find on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. There you go.
What's the number one thing that you are teaching men in this book of why should a man pick up this book and read it? What is it?
I don't think there's one man on earth who doesn't struggle with one of those 7 lies. So it's like you will absolutely find a solution. I wrote half the book. John Tyson wrote the other half, who, if you don't know John Tyson, I think one of the smartest and most brilliant minds and thinkers in Christian America today in the nation alive. And I'm not saying that as hyperbole. He's freaking brilliant. He's got an Australian accent, so everything sounds good. But that's what I would say is like, there's something in there. Men are struggling. Men have, whether it's lust, whether it's ambition, there's something eclipsing you. There's something holding you back from your destiny and your legacy. And I think at least one of those will resonate.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay,
how controversial do you get?
Yeah, well, they're not too bad.
Okay.
So for this next segment,
is it like hot take where you have to say it like one word?
Kind of, no, not hot take. Like, I just want to ask you.
You couldn't do it.
Yeah. I
couldn't.
We'd say one word and you give us.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay,
some more trending topics.
Do you guys ask everyone these, or is it just like?
No, it's just you.
Okay.
No, honestly, I want to know your thoughts as a Christian.
Okay.
Okay. As a
I want to know your
influencer.
thoughts.
Okay, so what do you think of the hate Taylor Swift is receiving from Christians?
Ooh.
he was ready for like a theological throwdown.
Yes. Okay, so this is an interesting one for me because I am a Swiftie, love Taylor Swift, listen to all her music. She's incredible. Now, I think the newest album there was a lot of it that was really good. But I think it's the first time I've been like, ugh.
Yeah.
And here's why.
Guilty of sin.
Yeah. Just here's why. I just feel like she's getting a little cynical.
She's cynical. 100%.
Yeah, but I think it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And 100%. So I'm like, ooh. And I'm starting to be like, man, she's mid-30s. And it's like, is she at her platform level and her size, is she communicating to young women that like it's okay to just stay in like a cynical, bitter, I don't know. All that to say, I do love her though, and I listen, and she's a bop. What do I think about now? The whole Christian thing of like people being she's a witch and all that stuff. She's like, you're idiots.
Thank you.
Just like it bothers me so much.
It bothers me
so much when everyone thinks everything's demonic or a witch or a thing and stuff, because there actually is some real evil stuff out there, and it's like leave it for the real evil stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
You know what I mean? So that's what I would say.
And calling someone demonic or evil is
like a real serious accusation.
Really bad.
Really bad.
Pretty high crime.
I get, because I post about her a decent amount when I like listen to her music because I like her, and like I said, I have some reservations on the newest one, but I'll get DMs about the way. I'm like, dude.
Just like, yeah.
Dude. And I don't even want to imagine your guys' DMs with your guys' platform levels, because mine are rough. It's just it's a dumpster fire.
Yours are worse. We always talk about this, like Christian.
Yeah, I do get
it the worst.
Christians, and then also because I talk about like semi-deep things that they're always like really they get really pissy about.
Yeah. Okay, we can kind of cut this because I'm gonna
that was a good one though.
That was a good one.
Do we feel the same about Taylor Swift? Is that semi in the same realm?
100%. I think Guilty as Sin was really my own song, but I agree with you. Like, I do feel like she's becoming cynical and kind of angry. It just feels a little bit
more hardened.
And it's like, I want you to become positive and happy again. Like, just honestly for you. Like, for Taylor.
Exactly. For her sake, and for her and Travis to bloom and flourish. 100%. And like, I just need some more Tim McGraw spirit. Like I miss
we
it.
all do.
Teardrops on my guitar. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Come on.
That is so good.
Hold on. Real hot take. Favorite Taylor Swift album that's easy for me, 1989. What's yours? 1989 is like just light years ahead.
The other day.
He likes, honestly, I think
Reputation.
Yeah, I would say, okay.
Oh, is that yours? Yeah, Reputation's up there.
Reputation, I think we got canceled that year.
So it just spoke to you.
Such an anthem.
You suffered together with Taylor Swift.
No, I literally did. Like, you have no idea. I would just put on Taylor Swift and like her stuff. Like, look what you made me do. And I would just sit there crying. Like, so I think Reputation just like, it helped me.
Yes, there's a story behind that. That wins.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's talk about the church. What do you see as your role in the church? I feel like you don't fit into the pastoral box.
I'm certainly not a pastor. Certainly not a pastor. I mean, the book of Ephesians and some of these other epistles would give very, very clear delineations of like pastor, apostle, teacher. There's certain roles. I would say I have apostolic tendencies. Now let me explain that for a second. And why I said that careful is like, I don't think I'm an apostle. Like, and it depends on the denomination in which you believe that. Apostolic tendencies would be someone who's teacher based. And I do try to lean into that. I do want to think and teach and spend most of my life trying to hopefully serve people with words and teaching. And then an apostolic influence or an apostolic nature is someone who's basically a little bit more like regional. So I think anyone on the internet is actually apostolic. I think to some degree, you guys could even be considered that at the really large definition of that word. It just means like apostolic means a voice beyond a local community. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I just think that's my role. And I actually think that's subservient, by the way, to local communities, not above. And what I mean by that is like my job is to be embedded in a way that's helping and discipling Christians with certain thinking and certain viewpoints, but then come underneath and make sure I'm serving and honoring and equipping the people doing the really hard work of the local church, but absolutely not a pastor, dude. I'm like, Alyssa loves being married to me and then hates being married to me because I do not have a pastor's heart, man. It's like someone shares something, I'm just like, sucks to be you. Like, I have to pray so hard, like, just be empathetic, be empathetic, be empathetic. Do you know what I mean?
That's hilarious.
And pastors need that skill set big time.
Let's see. Is there such thing as celebrity pastors, or is that just an unfair name given to pastors on Instagram? If so, how do you feel about them given you are friends with a lot of them? Should pastors have celebrity status? I
was just going to say, well, it's really tough when you're friends with a lot of them. I would say, this is a really nuanced conversation. Yes. Quickly, I would say, how would I say this? I think some people inflame it, meaning like they like it and they're trying to multiply what it does for them and how it helps them. I think that's wrong. I think that's for ill gain from a Christian perspective. Yep. And I think some are just like, man, I'm not in control of having this much influence. I need to steward it and be sensitive to it. I do think no matter which one you are responsible for the optics of you. Does that make sense? And I think sometimes people try to scapegoat that, meaning like take the preachers and sneakers thing or whatever. It's like, dude, can we maybe make an argument that it's cool to have $5,000 sneakers? Maybe. I wouldn't agree with that. And I struggle with that. And then also, at least as a pastor, I think anyone can have, you know what I mean? Like that's because of the optics of what that means to be a pastor. And so it's like that. Yeah. And she agrees. Is that Stella? She agrees. Stella. She's like, amen. And so I think pastors, that's the best way I would say it. People with really, really large followings and who write books and are also pastors have to be sensitive to the optics that are true about them that they're not in control of, but need to sensitively be like aware of.
They're responsible of that too.
They're responsible. They're not responsible for everything, but I think they're responsible for their own optics. Sorry, not the optics that they get, but they're responsible for understanding them and sensitively stewarding them. And at the end of the day, if they're a true pastor, biblically, they're called to serve a local place with local people, not be doing all the things on Instagram. So sometimes I'm like, dude, are you even at your church? Like, you know what I mean? You're just traveling and speaking all the time and all these things. Yeah. And it's fine. Like, I don't, but then also I will say to defend a lot of people, there's a lot of people that get a lot of crap online. And I'm like, man, when you're having coffee with them, they love the Lord fervently, wholeheartedly and devotedly. And you just wish people could see that side of them. So like all that's true.
Yeah. That was a really good answer.
You guys agree or disagree?
Agree.
I agree. I think my one struggle is I'm like, okay, so if they're responsible for the optics, so they're not wearing the $5,000 sneakers on stage, but then you go to their home and they're wearing the $5,000 sneakers and all the Cartier. And I'm like, that just kind of turns me off even more.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I would still put that in the same bucket. And I really don't like when a lot of Christian I don't like when a lot of Christian pastors with a large following use the same like tools as like the business world and the influence world. Does that make sense too?
It's what bothers us a lot.
We talk about
doing all the click funnels and all of this stuff. And I'm
all the time.
It just feels a little manipulative in a religious environment. Yes. Even though it's totally appropriate in a normal other environments.
100%. Yeah. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah, we talk about a lot, like how they're not really, it's almost like if you have someone who's a secular influencer and a Christian influencer, like both are trying to achieve the same thing, whether that's growth in the business. Like we're just kind of being more honest about it.
Totally.
There's a lot of pastors who I think are, doing things in the name of God.
Yeah, I'm doing it for the Lord.
I'm doing it for the Lord. It's like,
again, you're getting a crap ton of benefits.
The longer you lie to yourself that that's what you're doing it for, like the harder you're going to fall.
Totally.
I think you've seen that in church.
If Jesus or the disciples,
these are hot.
If Jesus or the disciples walked on earth today, do you think they would evangelize via social media?
Yes. Jesus, maybe not. I actually don't know. That's the question we got to ask him when we get there. I don't think you can make the argument. I think it's a really weak argument to say that Paul wouldn't. Now, is Paul technically a disciple? He's an apostle. I don't know. But like Paul, like, I mean, so you can't read the book of Acts and be like, it's very clear he's using every point of technology available to him in the first century, which would have been, so like, here's another way to put it. Paul is very clearly evangelizing via the marketplace. That was one of his primary domains. The marketplace in the first century was like the street fair with all the vendors, right? And there's a lot of people that like the most amount of people show up there. So he picked that strategically. Or the middle of a stadium, like, you know, like the Gladiator Stadium. He's, you know, and I think it's Acts 16 or 17, he has the riot in Ephesus where they literally pull him in there and try to stone him. And then he says, hold on, let me preach. And the dude's just preaching bangers in front of like all these people that are pissed at him. And you're like, dang. So he took advantage of all the largest rooms, all the largest moments from a multiplication stewardship standpoint. And you're like, well, it's really hard to draw. Like if you're going to draw a one-to-one today, what's the marketplace? It's certainly not the like farmer's market. Yep. It's like social media.
It's Twitter.
It's exactly. Well, X, and that place is a dumpster fire now.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, good luck. So I would say that. And then even back to our earlier point too, when you were talking about the culture and all that's how Christians should be in culture, Paul also, like what's one of my favorite parts about him in Acts is there's multiple times where he uses cultural voices to like critique the culture. So he's basically using their currency, their language, the people they look up to actually say, hey, your people say this. Like you're not paying attention. And then he kind of twists it and use it. It's kind of if someone were to use like some line from Drake or something and be like, hey, he's saying it too or something. I don't know. Yeah. But that's really what he was doing. He was using the poets and the preachers of that day that weren't Christian to leverage his point and push it farther. Short answer, I do think he would. What about you guys?
I don't know about Jesus either.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I don't know.
He seems a little more. He seems a little more introverted. He just really does.
But I can't wait to ask him.
Yes. I don't know if he would have. I actually don't know if he would have, and I might make a case for why he wouldn't. But I'll think about that in the next episode. Yeah, but Paul, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's wrap.
Okay.
Okay, see ya.
Yep.
Done.
So that was it.
No, I'm joking.
No. Okay. So tell us again where everyone can find your book and your Instagram, all your socials.
Jefferson Bethke Instagram is the one I'm most active on. So just go there. I like responding and talking to people and doing stuff there. And then the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Fighting Shadows.
Jeff, thank you so much for being here. We all learned so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We might have to have you back.
I mean, I'm down.